Yo guys, what is up? Max on our first Descendant video, and today we are doing our updated tier list guide. Now I've been making these for a bunch of the past seasons. So what we're gonna do today is we're gonna rank all of the Descendants. If you haven't seen one of my tier list videos before, basically, I think it's only fair to rank the Descendants based off of their categories. And for this, we're gonna have two categories: mobbing and bossing. Where the Descendants get placed in the tiers, we'll give them a point. And at the end, we're gonna do a overall tier list. That's not something I'm deciding on. It's just going to be the accumulation of how many points they earn from where they're placed in mobbing and bossing, and then we'll talk about overall. But before we get into this, this is just a for fun video, and it is my opinion on the Descendants. Your opinion may differ. That is totally fine. Let's argue in the comments about it. But I wanted to make this because with the Arche Tuning Boards and all of the new changes they've made, a lot of the Descendants have moved around or shifted, and we've got some new Descendants as well. So I hope you guys enjoy the breakdown. Let's get right into it. So we're starting off with Blair. Blair is pretty solid at mobbing. He has some awkwardness with his one. Basically, if you want to make it a thing that you can throw, it just is worse and has worse range, and his flamethrower still makes you really slow, and his whole kit just kind of slows him down. I really hope with the ultimate they improve on him, make him more fluid. Being able to use his abilities while sprinting with no slowdown like they did to Esima would be fantastic. And Blair does a ton of damage. He just has a tough time getting that damage to the enemies sometimes. He kind of needs them to come to him. He's a little bit more of a defense feeling Descendant. So for that, we're going to be putting him in C tier. No, I'm going to try to keep this from left to right, so the strongest for the farthest left. Next, we get to talk about Eugen. Eugen is slept on for mobbing, in my opinion, specifically with his proliferating allergy mod. You can basically apply this on a 100% uptime to mobs, and then if you shoot into that group of mobs, you'll deal tons of skill damage, and this can multi-hit elites. So the fact that they've increased the mob density in the game, the more enemies are on screen there are, the more damage Eugen will deal. And so he, in my opinion, is just a better mobber than Blair because he does more damage more fast. And so we're going to be putting him at a bit higher than C tier. Not quite good enough to get to our other tiers, but we'll talk about that in a second. Next up, we get to Viessa. Viessa is easy A tier. She hits so hard with all of her abilities. She's got the ability to move quickly. She's got really low cooldown on her 4, which she can cover massive areas. She can use Cold Snap for defense mobbing. She can use Absolute Zero, which is a fantastic mod to get super high damage, really crazy crit rate. I think she is great and could definitely make a case for putting her in S tier. I'm going to be honest. We'll put her in A tier for now, and then we'll see how the tier list pans out. Then we get to Haley. Haley's a bit of an awkward one, where Haley used to be this Descendant that would go slowly, and you would have so much crit rate, and you could hit so hard, but you would have this massive penalty of moving really slow. And now we've got Descendants that can do more damage with guns than Haley, without any of the drawbacks of moving slow or having to build up things or losing stacks when you roll or grapple. Her whole kit slows her down. And so while Haley is fantastic with guns and does a ton of damage, it's hard to rank her that high because she just is slow. And this section that we're talking about is specifically for mobbing. So I'm going to be putting her at the top of C tier for now. I think that's higher than I've rated her before. Once again, does a ton of damage. She's one of the better Void Erosion clear persons or Descendants. We're not really factoring in Void Erosion for this specifically, mainly just general mobbing. Then we get to Serena. Serena, as we all know, is incredibly powerful, just does so much damage with her guns. I think both her ability build and her gun build are pretty good. I think her ability build is a bit slower, in my opinion, for clear speed than if you're rocking a Restored Relic in the air or using the Malevolent, but she's got tons of movement speed. She's got great mobility. She's got tons of damage, and her 4th skill is just broken. So I think she's easy place in S tier. And then we've got Freyna. I think Freyna, is still fantastic. I think she's also an easy S tier. She is probably the second best, maybe third best mobber in the game. She has not as much damage as some of our top mobbers. She's not going to be putting out as much damage as Serena if you're in mobbing, but she does it in such a wide area so easily that, I think she's an easy S class. Next up, we get to Jaber. Jaber, I don't know what they're doing with this character. I'm going to be honest. We were begging for buffs and reworks. And they said, we're going to rework Jaber. And then they like slightly gave him some quality of life for buffing his turrets. And that was it. And he still does just abysmal damage, in my opinion. Yes, you can stack up his turrets. Yes, you can do some like AFK farming with him or like abandoning farming. But like for what he should be good at, he's still not great at, in my opinion. We're going to be putting him in D tier. Then we get to Ajax. Ajax is in an interesting spot right now where he's still as good as he was, but you just kind of need a little bit more damage to like really shine, and he doesn't hit as hard as some of our top Descendants now. Like if Ajax was hitting for the same amount of damage as Viesa with his jumps, he would be in a crazy position right now. Ajax has the kit. He just needs a little bit more damage. If they buff his damage, he could be one of the better mobbing characters. But currently, he just needs a bit more damage to keep up with the other Descendants. We'll be putting him up in C tier. Next, we've got Bunny. Bunny is also easy S tier. Where you place her, I think, kind of depends on what build you're running on. Right now, Bunny's like most efficient build is running sprint cores with electric condense to just spam out her 4 and her 3. She can deal a ton of damage that way. And so Bunny, I think, has always been S tier. She still continues to be there. Next up, we've got Sharon. Sharon hits really hard, but in not a great AoE. Like, she hits harder than Ajax, Eugen, or Blair here, but her AoE clear isn't as good, but she can also be super safe. She's super fast, and she just deletes whatever's in front of her. And so prioritizing damage, I'm going to put her just slightly above in B tier. Then we've got Ultimate Valby. Valby's going to be going in A tier. Valby's got the speed, she's got AoE, she's got damage. Her new 4, if you get cooldown on it, does so much area coverage and so much damage, it will just delete everything in front of you. So she's got like the damage that you would need from Sharon, but in a much better AoE. I think she's a really good place for her right there in A. Next, we get to Inez. I think Inez is the most busted AoE farmer that we've seen. She does have like the AoE that Freyna and Bunny and Serena has, but you can get her 4 on a like 3-second cooldown. You can spam them and like put them on top of each other. She's killing everything on the map, and she's doing it with more like ability damage than like a Freyna is. She really just doesn't struggle with anything. If you need single target, you could spam her 1. She can do it through walls. She is, in my opinion, the easiest skill Descendant to get through Void Erosion, just because she has the safety of hiding behind walls. And so I think she's currently in our S+ tier. Really, really strongly recommend you play her. Obviously, you know, she's got a nerf looming, so we'll see what happens. But I do want to place this tier list now because we'll see where she ends up after her nerfs. Next up, we've got Keelan. Keelan was in a rough spot when he first launched. Thankfully, they've buffed him, and he has better cooldowns now. Unfortunately, I still think his damage is lackluster. And when you're dashing and hitting everything, that's great. But if you're dashing and not one-shotting everything, then you need to go back to spamming your dashes on the same thing. And I think Keelan's kind of in the exact same spot that I'd put Ajax in, where he can hit a lot of things and do it really quickly with really low cooldowns, but he just needs a bit more damage, and then he would be in a much higher tier. So we're going to be putting Keelan also in C tier. Next up, we've got Esimo. Esimo's mobbing is still just very awkward. His damage is good, but it's just so awkward to play. I'm going to be putting him in F tier, honestly. Then we've got Enzo. Enzo's kind of in the similar spot. I think Enzo's technically D just because he's got some good efficiency with his weapons. And, like, we have really powerful weapons now. But, like, you could definitely make a case for Enzo being in F. We did skip D tier, by the way, which putting them in F. Esimo is in F. Next, we get to Ultimate Blair. Now, Ultimate Glay. With Glay, we're talking, purely gun builds. Yes, she does have skill builds, but they just aren't anywhere on the same level, especially with the new cores. So specifically, Glay with, like, a Restored Relic or a Malevolent, I think is good clear. She is a bit slower when she's using her abilities, and so that definitely hampers her down. But I do think her ability to utilize something like the Restored Relic much better than like Haley can does put her in a higher tier than Haley, even though these characters are similar. I do think Glade not having to suffer from her movement speed, not getting penalized for rolling or grappling, puts her slightly above our Haley. Next, we got Lepic. Lepic is in an interesting spot because he's got basically the only skill in the entire game that can like really strongly group enemies up. And so depending on the scenario that you're in, if you are using him and synergizing both his pulls on low cooldowns with guns that can delete the enemies in them, he can be a really efficient mobber. The only thing is, for his mobbing, you have setup. For example, if you're Viesa, you just hit your ability and enemies die. Lepic technically has a second button. He has to pull and then shoot, or pull in this. And that is just going to slow down his mobbing. So we're going to be putting him in B tier. Very efficient mobber, but he's got like an additional button to press technically, and so a little bit slower than some of these other ones. Kyle, I don't know what they did to Kyle. Kyle was actually pretty decent at mobbing, and I think with his Arche Tuning Boards, you could get some of his cooldowns back, which would be helpful, but they kind of butchered his cooldowns, and in turn, some of his builds used to be able to spam his 3 and dash around and spam his 3 and get good damage in a all-right AoE that has since been, like, nerfed for some reason. So we're going to be putting Kyle down in F tier. Next up, Luna. Now, I'm going to be completely honest here. I have a bias against Luna. I have seen some cracked Luna players that just fly around the map in a big AoE, doing tons of crit damage and like nuking rooms. I think she is a weaker version of Bunny right now. And I do need to play her more because of, like, I just don't really play her that often. I'm going to be putting her in B. I think she has a ton of potential, and if they like gave her a little bit more love, I think she's an A. Could like make an argument for A, honestly, but for that, I think we put her a little bit above Lepic in B. And then at the end here, we've just got like the normal Descendants, which I'm not going to be ranking normals versus ultimates. So I think we got everyone there. We should be good. All right, now let's talk Descendants. We're starting with Lepic, who is kind of just, I think, middle of the pack. He is good with his skill build. It does a bunch of damage, still can kill bosses. That damage hasn't changed. However, gun builds are just superior, and he does have the ability to buff guns. So I think he's better than a lot of the skill users because he has that second option and that versatility, but he's also just not the best right now. So I think B is kind of good spot for him. Next up, we've got Eugen. Eugen is in support tier. Support tier is not lower on the list than like F or anything like that. Usually with these lists, we give support tier like the points of being in C. But depending on your team comp, depending on like who you're playing, solo or not, it's hard to rank them because of their usefulness changes depending on what you're fighting against. But do not sleep on Eugen's gun damage, where he uses like Passionate Sponsor with shot focus and using his allergy. Like, he could do some really impressive things. Next up, we've got Haley. Haley's going in S tier. She's got arguably one of the highest skill damage build, but also is fantastic with guns, and just about any gun she can turn into a crit machine. She is really, really powerful. She has been power crept a bit by some of the Descendants we'll talk about, but she is one of the best gun users, and so I think she easily deserves S. Next up, we've got Keelan. Keelan's going to be going in F tier. Unfortunately, Keelan is really relegated to just skill builds, and his skill build just does not deal enough damage to take on bosses. He is much more of a mobbing Descendant, so we're going to be putting him in F. Next up, Luna, also support tier. Luna can bring incredible buffs to the team, but it depends on the team comp. If you bring a skill buffing Luna you're just going in random into a group, and you're playing with a bunch of gun Descendants, you're not really doing anything. But if you're bringing gun buff Luna, you can do some awesome things. It just kind of depends on your team. So once again, support tier. Next up, we've got Sharon. Sharon is also going to be going in S. She is incredible with one-shots, especially now that the ATAMs is a thing, but she's also very consistent with giving buffs to like her shotguns and nuking bosses that way. She is now one of the better bossers, so S tier for her. Next up, we've got Freyna. Freyna's in a bit of an awkward spot right now because she is also a skill user, and her 4 still does a ton of damage. It's just not quite what it used to be in comparison to what we can do now. And so I think she goes right there with Lepic in that they can nuke bosses with their abilities, but they're not as versatile as our gun Descendants. Inez is going in B tier as well. Inez, I'd put her below Lepic and Freyna. Her one spam is very potent. It's very powerful, but it doesn't have that burst that these two characters have. And so sometimes when you're using Innis, the Colossus will go immune on you. It's harder to get that like one tap or that like insta nuke because her damage is very consistent, but it doesn't have the same burst as these two. So we're putting her lower. Next up, lmao. lmao would have been higher. Unfortunately, he got indirectly nerfed this most recent patch because the Colossus now spawn way faster. You used to be able to put down like 15 bombs below a Colossus's feet. They'd spawn in, you'd hit your trigger, boom, no more boss. Now you can't even get to the boss in time before you can start planting your bombs. And so while he's still doing the same damage, now you got to be chasing the boss down, trying to put mines on them, and like they can just walk out of your damage. And so he's in a really weird spot where he's still doing a ton of damage, but he doesn't really get the opportunity to do that damage, which is a big old bummer. So yeah, got to move him down. Next up, we got Blair. Some people are going to question this. For Blair, we're just talking gun builds. His skill build for dealing with bosses is terrible. It is very, very weak. However, he is one of the better boss buff or weapon buffers. He can increase his weak point damage, crit chance, crit damage. His only downside and why he's not in like S tier with Haley and Sharon is he has a ton of setup that he needs to do, and with bosses spawning faster, you got to throw your 4, you got to use your 2s or your 1s, and then you got to use your 2s and then maintain your 1s and your fires. He's got a lot of like management, but when he is fully buffed, he gives a ton of gun damage, but he's a lot tougher to like get to that state than these two, and so we're going to be putting him in A. Next up, we've got Serena. Serena has power crept the entire game. She is incredibly powerful. She has all of the damage and none of the downsides. She can fly. She gets massive scaling. A lot of these characters that are going to be dealing all of this damage are doing so with low amounts of health, like you're using Slayer set and you have to be weak. Serena gets to walk into a boss with 40,000 HP and more damage than anything else in the game. She is a support. She is a tank. She is a DPS. She does it all, and she does it better than most of the other Descendants, so we're going to be putting her in S+. Next up, we've got Enzo. Enzo, you could put in support. However, he, unlike the other support characters, can function on his own. As in, like, Eugen, you need teammates to get your passionate sponsor. Enzo can do the things on his own, so we're going to be putting him in A tier. He's good into any team that you roll into, but he also can buff up his own weapons a bunch. Next up, Valby. Valby, I think, is honestly one of the only skill users that I will be putting in A tier. I guess Haley is a bit stronger, but Valby's 4 recently got buffed. You can actually, like, basically pre-fire it on bosses, and even though bosses spawn faster, you can get out, like, a ton of these shots, pre-stack them on the boss, and then when the boss spawns, they're going to be getting ticked for, like, 75% of their HP with just her 4, and then you can throw in some gunshots because she can buff up her guns as well and call it a day. Valby's actually in a really good spot right now. As long as the boss stays in her 4, she's got some of the highest damage in the game right now. But if the boss walks out of her 4, she loses a lot of that damage. Next up, we got Ajax. I'm going to put Ajax in support tier. Once again, just kind of the team comp. He can't really do anything on his own, but with teammates, you can get that passionate sponsor. You can use your Matrix and get a ton of gun buffs. Next up, we've got Bunny. Bunny is going to put same tier as lmao. She does a lot of good things, but bossing's not really ever been her like specialty. Kyle's also going to be going in this C tier. Kyle's got a really powerful 4 build that just deletes bosses, but so many things can go wrong, and it's an all-in ability that if you don't kill the boss with your 4, you're left with basically nothing. And half the time that you're going to use your 4, the boss might swipe you out of the air, or you hit something while you're going up. It's just kind of an all or nothing. He's not a character that I would really want to farm bosses with because he's just not very consistent, but he does put out good damage. Next up, we've got Jaber. Jaber is going back to his home in F tier. He loves it there. He hasn't moved in months, so I wouldn't want to disturb his peace. Let's just keep him there. Next up, we've got Glay. Glay goes to S tier. Glay is in a really great spot because fire rate is in a really, really like meta position right now, where previously, up until cores, we could have mods for crit. We could put a bunch of crit mods on. We could have mods for element. We could put a bunch of element mods. We could put a bunch of firearm mods. We've never, ever been able to put more than one fire rate on a weapon, and our DPS has been severely limited by the lack of fire rate. Now we have cores where you can get massive amounts of fire rate on your weapon, and Glay is the best user of anything that is high fire rate because she can fire her gun without using ammo. She has infinite fire, and so her spot right now is basically you put on anything that fires quickly with high damage, you hold down the trigger, and the boss will disappear in front of you. I don't think she's quite as strong as Serena, which is why she's an S, not S+, but she is one of the stronger weapon users. If weapons are good, Glay is good, and weapons have never been stronger. And then lastly, we've got Viessa. Viessa's kind of in the same spot with Lepic, Freyna, and Inez, where she is like one of the higher skill dealing Descendants. And for like Infernal Walker, when we were killing Infernal Walker, Viessa was fantastic. But Viessa needs the like good elemental matchup. If you take Viessa into Gluttony or anything else, she's not going to have a good time. So she's kind of in this middle ground where, you know, if you get a good matchup, she's fantastic, one of the highest skill damage Descendants in the game, but she doesn't have that versatility that you can put on like Valby or Enzo or Blair, where you can put any weapon on with any element and just have a good time. And so this is going to be our boss tier list. And lastly, we get to our overall tier list. Now, this isn't a tier list that I'm moving around or adjusting. Basically, we've got this spreadsheet. This is the spreadsheet of basically what their score was. If they were at the very top, S+, they get a 1. If they're at the bottom, they get however many tiers it is from S+. And so we gave them all a score for mobbing and bossing, and then just did those and added them up. And then we get our top Descendants, and then we put those in a tier list. This is what it looks like. Serena had like multiple points less than anyone else, and then Inez had multiple points less than the next. So we have Serena in her own tier, followed by Inez in her own tier, which honestly I think lines up. And then we get the like characters in A that are good at bossing and mobbing, where, you know, Glay is really good at bossing, not quite as good at mobbing, but still really good. Same with Sharon. Sharon's not as great at mobbing, but very good at bossing. Freyna's really good at mobbing, but not as great at bossing. And then Valby's pretty solid at both. Then we've got our kind of more niche characters where they're really good at one thing, but more weak on the other things, where Bunny's fantastic at mobbing, one of the best in the game, but really doesn't have much purpose for bossing. Viessa, really good at mobbing, not as great at bossing. Depends on the boss, once again, with her matchups. Haley, slow, but good at mobbing and like really powerful at bossing. And then we've got, you know, our kind of like general characters that are, you know, going to be useful, but like not the ones that you're gravitating to first, which is Lepic, Blair, and Luna, all strong in their own ways, but probably not the first to pick for you. And then we've got our D tier, which is just like, they have their uses, but they're not the best at them. They're not great at them, but, you know, they have areas where they're strong. And then our F tiers, which is basically like, why would you ever pick this character? There isn't a scenario that you would want to use them, basically. And so that is our overall tier list and kind of how things shook up. These tier lists always end with Enzo really low on them. Which, you know, I don't think is reflective of his actual place in the game. And I always get yelled at, how could he put Enzo in D? But Enzo just doesn't really bring anything to the table for mobbing. And they're gun characters that are just better than him at using guns. And so, like, the overall tier list doesn't love, like, Enzo's position because he's just kind of in an awkward spot. But this doesn't mean that I think Enzo's like a D-tier Descendant. This is kind of like where he shakes out. And so, yeah, guys, that is the tier list. Obviously, you know, a lot of opinions here, but I also did try to play these Descendants and, you know, make sure that we are putting them in the place that I think they deserve. So, yeah, guys, I will catch y'all in the next one. Let me know your thoughts down below. Let me know how wrong I am and how misguided and misjudged I took your favorite Descendant. But, yeah, I'll catch y'all in the next one, guys. Take care. Peace.